What's up guys, welcome back to Life of Bliss and the next video in the DIY Sound Group build series. So I've got the Volt 10 boxes and the $12.99 boxes from DIY Sound Group completed, and now I need to prep them to get ready for paint. I'm going to be spraying these with DuraTex, and whenever you spray anything, you need things pretty smooth to get a good finish. So I need to come back and fill all these nail holes up, come over these seams, and fill in any gaps, sand all the edges smooth. And to do this, I've got a couple of products. The first one is just some drywall spackle. This is a great product for probably 90-95% of all these edges and nail holes. We're not looking to fill any gaps or anything like that. We're just looking to smooth things out, get rid of this little seam that you're going to see on all these edges, and that should give us a nice finish. There's a couple of larger gaps that I've got some Rage body filler. Not too many, but that's a little bit stronger, and I want to make sure and fill those gaps and not have any cracking later on. So I'm going to be using that for a few areas, but like I said, for the most part, it's going to be this drywall spackle. So let me go ahead and get started, and I will show you the process along the way.
Prepping for paint is pretty time consuming and tedious, but the work you put in here will make the difference in the final product looking near flawless versus a little rough around the edges. You can see all the nail holes that need to be filled in and extra glue along the seams that need to be sanded down before applying the spackle. I took a sanding block with 220 grit sandpaper and went over every edge to knock down any high spots and excess glue. In the past, I've used power tools and have created deep sanding marks that can be seen in the final product, so I avoid using them now. I applied a liberal coat of spackle to the edges and went back over it a few times to smooth it down. The great thing about using this product is it's easy to work with, dries pretty quickly, and is very easy to sand, so don't worry too much about getting the spackle super smooth at this point. Here you can see the larger gaps I was talking about. The body filler was used to make sure that they were sealed and wouldn't crack later. This is applied similar to the spackle, but I made sure to press it into the cracks so that they were filled in. The next part may seem kind of tedious, but any edge I rounded over, I came back and rubbed in some spackle by hand. Any edge on MDF is very porous and will suck up paint, giving it a rough look. This will help seal that rounded edge for a smoother finish. From here, it was just repeating the same process for every box. If you saw the first build video, you'll remember I cut the front baffles in a few places to rearrange the layout. A light coat of spackle was placed on those seams to try and make the face as smooth as possible. Once all of the spackle was dry, it was time to sand everything smooth. I used the same sanding block and 220 grit paper to go over everything. Applying light, even pressure, the goal was to sand away most of the spackle and leave just enough to even out any high and low spots along the edge. Oh, and get ready to feel the burn in your shoulders. This step takes a while. Here you can see just how much is left over and how thin of a layer you are left with. You should be able to run your hand over all of the edges and not feel the transition between the boards or any cracks. If you do, you can reapply and work those areas over until everything is smooth to the touch. Although DuraTex does not require a primer, spraying everything down to make it a consistent color will help you identify any edges that may need more work or nail holes that were missed. I ended up using just a cheap Rust-Oleum sandable primer. Any primer would be suitable for this step as long as it works well on wood products. After spraying, I was able to find a few areas that needed some more work. Here is also a good example of how edges can suck up paint and give a very textured look. A thin layer of spackle and sanding will solve this. With everything prepped for paint, the floor was covered with plastic and the speakers spaced out and placed on stands. I ended up purchasing a Bliss HVLP spray gun kit to use for this project. The DuraTex paint I went with is a tough speaker coating product that is easy to use and can either be rolled on or sprayed on. Even though I got the spray grade DuraTex, it was still too thick to get a good flow out of the gun. Since it is water-based, it was super easy to thin down to get the consistency I was looking for. I didn't take an exact percentage of how much I cut the DuraTex, but I would say adding roughly 5 to 10% of water to the volume gave me the consistency I was looking for. Ultimately, you want to add just enough water to where the product flows off the mixing stick in a consistent manner instead of coming off in clumps or not at all. I'll be going over the painting process in detail since it's probably the most technical part, but the first step was to paint the back of the surrounds and bottoms of the other boxes so I could paint all of the other sides at the same time. I also didn't prep the bottom of the towers like everything else, so you can see how the edges will look if nothing has been done to them before spraying. To prevent overspray from going into the boxes, blue painter's tape was used to cover all of the speaker holes. I also took a few towels and plugged the back of the ports. When mixing the DuraTex, I found that just over 3/4 of a quart after adding the water was enough to completely cover all the boxes with one coat. Before doing the first coat, I went back over all of the surfaces with a rag to wipe away any dust to make sure there was good adhesion. After a few test panels, I found that I got a good spray pattern and texture setting the gun to 20 psi. You'll want to read the manual for your particular spray gun on how to adjust the airflow and spray volume, but I tried to shoot for a nice cigar pattern that was about 6 to 7 inches long. Now I'll be showing several different views and angles of the painting process, but if this has helped you out so far, please help me out and hit that thumbs up button below. Now the key to getting a super smooth paint job with this sort of gun is to hit every angle and corner at the same distance, and overlap your spray pattern by roughly 50% with each pass. You want to make sure the entire surface gets a wet coat of material on there with no dry spots. You also don't want to sit in one spot for too long or move too slowly, as this can cause a buildup of product and create runs. Smooth, continuous motions across the entire surface will get the best results. Now if you've never used a gun like this before, I strongly recommend trying to paint a few test panels first to get some practice in. You don't want your boxes that you've been working on for days be the first thing you try and paint and have any mistakes happen. Here's another angle to get a better idea of the overlap and getting an even wet coat on the entire surface. Be sure to hit all of the corners directly. You'll see I hit all of the bottom corners before moving on to the flat surface. Not doing so could cause the corners to have less product than any of the other surfaces. You can also see how I continue to spray the DuraTex past the end of the box with a brief release of the trigger once I get past. You normally don't want to start or stop a spray pattern in the middle of a panel, as this can cause a buildup of product or create a different texture than everywhere else. Turning the tip of the spray gun allows for a horizontal spray pattern for the towers, so I didn't have to turn the gun sideways or do shorter passes side to side. Quickly releasing the trigger and engaging again before hitting the box just reduces the overspray and wasted product. It's difficult to spray product into the port areas, so you can see why I decided to paint those first during assembly. Here's right after spraying one of the coats. There is a uniform sheen and texture without any dry spots. Overall, I applied 4 coats to all of the boxes and waited 30 to 45 minutes between each coat. This used roughly 80% of the gallon of DuraTex. After letting the final coat sit for about an hour, I came back and carefully removed all the tape. Leaving it on could possibly create some areas peeling up if removed when the DuraTex is fully cured. After letting them sit for 2 days, it was time to move them to the basement for final assembly. I made all of the connection wires with 14 gauge OFC wire and the correct size connectors.
So I want real quickly to go over these Nutrike speak-on connectors. So this is the base plate that's going to be going on all of the speakers. And here are the connectors here. They just go in at a little bit of an angle and then twist and lock into place just like that. And these won't be coming off unless you pull back on this little tab here, twist it again, and pull out. This just creates a little bit more of a secure connection than banana plugs or just doing bare wires. So I was going to show you how these are set up as well. This is a 4-pin connector. You can see on the back here that there are 4 pins, and I'll try to take a picture of a close-up there to show you the different numbers, but there's a 1 positive, 1 negative, 2 positive, 2 negative on here. So you get the positive and negative for 2 speakers if you were connecting that many inside of your speaker cabinet there. And then here are all the pieces for one of the connectors. I'm going to go ahead and show you how that's put together as well. So on your base plate, once you found your 1 positive and 1 negative, that's all I'm going to be using. You'll just take your spade connectors there, throw it on the 1 positive and 1 negative. And then that just goes on the outside of the box with the wires on the inside. Next is the speak-on plug. You can see on the back here, there are 4 spots for wires to plug into there as well. I'll get another picture and show you that. But again, there's a 1 positive and negative and a 2 positive and negative. So I'm gonna back that screw out just a little bit. Here's the 1 negative, I believe. Yeah. All right, let's take our positive side of the wire, throw it inside our 1 positive, hold it there, tighten that screw, and then do the same thing for the negative side. Once those are nice and tight in there, you'll get the shield that goes around everything, and you'll just go on either side of that tab there on the top. All right, it kind of clicks into place there. And there is 1 screw, goes in the top side. Once that is done, you'll take your other end of the wire, and there's this clamp that when tightened, it'll just tighten down on the wire, make sure it's not being pulled on your connections up here. It's being held tightly there. Throw our screw end up on the back side as well. That goes inside the threads. And as you tighten this down, it's going to get a little bit harder, and that's because those plastic tabs are holding that wire into place. So again, it's not pulling on your screw-on connections there. So then the final step is just these little trim rings that go along where the threads were. And you'll just clip those on and you'll be done. There we go. That is the connector. So again, this is on your box. This just goes in at an angle, clicks in, and you got a nice sturdy connection there.
The crossovers are labeled for low, high, and mid frequencies, as well as the input from the power source. It's much easier to connect all the speaker wires to the crossovers outside of the box. The woofers and mids in these kits are wired in parallel, so each speaker will get its own set of connections straight from the crossover. It's also not a bad idea to test each crossover before throwing everything in the boxes. The waveguides will need the supplied gasket tape installed along the backside and the compression drivers bolted into place. The Volt 10 woofers have a waveguide in the center of the cone and threads on the back for the compression driver to screw into. Okay, now we're ready for final assembly. The crossovers were screwed into the mounting blocks and the speak-on plate was pressed into place and secured with screws. The input wire was ran underneath the crossover and connected to the terminals. From here, it was just a matter of centering the speakers, pre-drilling all of the holes, and screwing them into place.
These speakers really turned out awesome looking. At over 4 feet tall and weighing in over 100 pounds, the 1299 towers completely dwarf the Swope towers I have been using. The center channel will no doubt be able to keep up with the towers and provide great clarity and detail for voices, and the Volt 10 should really dig in and provide some amazing, accurate surround effects. This DuraTex coating really laid down smooth and gave a great finish for these speakers. Not every edge is completely hidden, but overall there are no major flaws and they came out looking great. The matte color should really reduce the reflections from my projector, and the finish should be tough enough to handle almost anything my son could quite literally throw at it. But I'm hoping we don't have to worry about that problem. So I hope this video gives you guys some good ideas on how to finish your speaker cabinets and how to get a professional and clean look. I'll leave a link in the description below on the products that I used during this video, as well as a link to the last video where I did most of the construction on these boxes. I am really excited to get everything set up in my theater area, tune it up, and start listening to it. I'll be getting a video out to you guys of that process, plus I'll be comparing them to my DIY Swope towers that I made a few years back, and I'll get some sound demos for you guys to listen to as well. And if you're not a subscriber already, be sure to do that so you're notified when there are any updates on the home theater. Next week I should be starting the build on the 3 24-inch stereo integrity subwoofers, so hopefully I'll be able to knock that out soon and get a build video out to you guys. But for now, thanks for checking out Life of Bliss, and I will see you soon.